Hello, my name is Ethan Brown, and I'm a student at Shawnee State University in the Game Engineering degree. Today I will be presenting my senior project, which is a top-down dungeon crawler titled Shackled Souls. The most efficient way to describe Shackled Souls is through an elevator pitch in the form of a razor statement. The razor statement for Shackled Souls is an intense fight for survival in an evolving environment where every second counts. To elaborate on the razor statement, I will describe the pillars of Shackled Souls. The pillars are the fundamental design choices that make the game what it is. In other words, if the final product does not encapsulate these fundamental design choices, the development of the game has sort of lost its sense of direction. The first pillar of Shackled Souls is that time is crucial. And this is true for a couple reasons. The first reason is that until you get through the stage of the dungeon and kill the boss, your life is constantly ticking down. Your life force is constantly being drained by the boss. The second reason is due to the fast-paced nature of the combat system in Shackled Souls. So there's constantly enemies coming after you in any given room. And for this reason, you could make a misplay. You could try to dodge in the wrong direction and end up getting hit and lose a big chunk of your life force. And considering that your life force is constantly being drained, the amount of time you have to complete the level is inherently tied to the amount of life you have. The second pillar of Shackled Souls is that you will be able to evolve to become stronger. The primary way in which this happens is that you will kill and consume souls to gain power. So for each enemy that you kill is a corresponding element, and you get that element and add to that elemental level that you have. So for example, if you kill a fire enemy, your fire level is going to go up, and you're going to gain stats from that level, such as more damage and a stronger piercing effect on your attacks. The second way in which you will evolve to become stronger is that you will be offered end of level evolutions. So what this means is after you kill the boss, depending on how you've played out the stage, you're going to be offered an evolution that changes the way your abilities work, changes the way your attacks work, changes the overall flow of the game. The third pillar of Shackled Souls is that there will be divergent environments, and this is an important factor for the sake of replayability. So how Shackled Souls is going to handle this is through procedural generation, for one, and secondly through differing enemy types. So procedural generation will make it so that every single session or every single run that the player goes through will not feel exactly like the last run, and that's because every time a new dungeon is generated, it will be different from the last one. The rooms will be set up in a completely different nature. As you can kind of see in the example off to the side here, we have an example of one of the ways in which the dungeon is generated. Now, to touch on the second point, differing enemy types. As you progress through the stages, the enemy AI is going to get harder, their stats are going to increase, so each stage will feel more and more intense as the game goes on. Not to mention the different elemental types that have different effects throughout the game as well. The fourth and final pillar for Shackled Souls is that you will be able to express your playstyle. This is important for players because the ability to express your playstyle gives you freedom to choose to play the game how you want to play the game. So the ability to express your playstyle all comes down to choices. This is choice and evolutions, choice and characters, choice and soul relics. So the choice and evolutions comes from the evolution abilities that you're going to be offered at the end of each stage. The choice and characters that have different abilities and different base stats will offer the player different choices in terms of how they want to play the run or play through their session. And choice and soul relics, which is an item that the player can forfeit some of their life force for, will change the flow of the game more and tweak it more towards your play style as well. Now on to the games that inspired me to create Shackled Souls. These are the games such as The Binding of Isaac, Enter the Gungeon, and Hades. And all these games inspired me in different ways, and the ways in which they each individually inspired me are listed as follows. So firstly, we have The Binding of Isaac, which is probably the most prominent one that inspired me, and it's probably the one I've spent the most time with. It has inspired me in terms of creating my generation and how I'm going to handle enemy design going forward and how I'm going to handle enemy difficulty. So whenever I get into demoing the game, you're going to see how the generation looks similar to that of the Binding of Isaac games, and you're going to see later on that as the stages move on, the enemy AI getting more difficult. That's kind of pulled from the Binding of Isaac. As the later the stages go on, it's not always just a stat increase that makes the enemies more difficult to deal with. It's just the way in which the enemies are programmed to move and attack makes the enemies more difficult too. Now, from Enter the Gungeon, I mainly just pulled from the art style of Enter the Gungeon more. I really like the art style of Enter the Gungeon, especially for Shackled Souls. It's not quite as cartoony as something like The Binding of Isaac. It has a little bit more detail, and overall, I kind of like the style for Enter the Gungeon. For Hades, the main thing I really liked with Hades was the way that the combat system worked. So you're going to see this in Shackled Souls because with Hades, you get to dash around a lot. Mobility is very important in that game, and that's something I kind of wanted to translate over into Shackled Souls. You're going to be able to dash a lot and be able to have a lot of movement because not getting hit is going to be such a prominent part of this game because getting hit even one time can make or break the run. It can mean the difference between dying, starting completely over and losing all your progress, or moving on to the next stage and progressing to the next level. The second thing I pulled from Hades is kind of that power progression. So in Hades, they offer you things called boons, which increase things on your abilities. So they'll give you more. Sometimes it's just something as simple as flat damage, or it might make your roll, it might make your dash, give you defense stats or something like that. But I kind of like the idea of that mixed in with the evolution system because that fits perfectly with the ability system that I have in Shackled Souls and the ability to evolve those abilities and make them stronger. So that's something else I kind of pulled from Hades. All these are really great games, and I hope I can bring out some of their greatest aspects in Shackled Souls. On to the target audience for Shackled Souls. The target audience is going to be people who like permadeath and dungeon crawling and the genre of games that they play. So that's going to be particularly the type of people who would enjoy the games that I mentioned previously. Uh, so the target audience will then be pretty much anybody who likes a challenge. So that's going to be the real target demographic. Considering the permadeath aspect, anytime you die, you start over from square one, you lose all your stats, you lose all your progress, and start back from the beginning. People who like that are going to be people who tend to like a challenge. So the target demographic is going to be people who are really looking for a challenge in the game that they're playing. Sales of the titles that I previously mentioned in this game suggests that the fan base for this genre is growing. So if you take a look at Hades, which is the newest of these three releases, 1 million copies sold just days after the release across all platforms. Binding of Isaac Rebirth, which is the second of the Binding of Isaac series, sold about 2 million copies within the first 6 months, and Enter the Gungeon sold 1 million copies in a year. So the fan base is there, and not only that, with all the DLCs added onto the Binding of Isaac and all the modding that the community does, it suggests that fans stick around for this type of genre. So that's promising on the outlook for the development of Shackled Souls. Just one more thing before I get into the demo, and that's going to be the gameplay of Shackled Souls and what the player can expect to see. So this is going to be what the player will experience. Moment to moment, the player is going to experience fast-paced combat, rewarding power spikes, harsh obstacles. Session to session, there's going to be different level layouts each time the dungeon's generated. There's going to be unlockable evolutions and content such as additional monsters, additional bosses, additional soul relics. And day to day, the player can look forward to a challenging score system and a match history where they can store their best runs and potentially a leaderboard down the road. Now, I'm going to hop right into the demonstration. Okay, so I'm going to voice over here and watch back and just talk over the gameplay while I'm watching it so that I can think a little bit better about what I want to say here. And the first point I'd like to make is that the slimes are not really going to be in the final game. They're kind of just there to show you guys that there are different elements in the game. So like the red slime, if you notice when I kill it right there, boom, I just got some XP towards my fire level. So that's going to increase my damage stat right there. As the game gets more developed out, you're going to see more enemies like these ones that are in this room. They're going to be a little bit more detailed. They're going to be their AI is going to be a little bit more complex, a little bit more advanced. The slimes are just kind of mindlessly wander around. They're just there for the simple aspect of showing off the evolution system and showing the levels and how you level up whenever you kill each one. So the other enemies that aren't slimes, they actually level you up too, but it's just not as apparent because they don't have the different colors to represent the different elements. The slimes are just more representative of that. As the gameplay goes on here, uh, one of the things that will be added in the future that I'm kind of noticing now, or I was kind of noticing whenever I was doing the demo, was that it's kind of hard to just know where the boss room is. So I'm definitely gonna give a better indicator of that later on down the road and give an indication of where the boss is. That way, you're not so lost whenever you're roaming around looking for where it's at. Another note to mention too is that the stats for the enemies are not going to be on this level whenever the game's actually released. The stats are tweaked a little bit just for the demonstration purposes. The player has a little bit higher stats than what he would normally have, and the enemies have a little bit lower stats than what they would normally have as well. And then here you see we came into the boss room, and it looks like we got the slime boss for this one. And then after defeating the boss, the square spawns in the center, which just represents where you walk into to go to the next stage. Okay, some final thoughts here before I close out the presentation. Uh, Starting with the most important one, it's time to get excited. Because although Shackled Souls is still in development and there's a long way to go, that's actually a good thing because we have a lot of content coming. I have a lot of ideas that are being currently developed on. Uh, Here are a few of them: unique character selection, soul relics, more enemy types. That includes more complex enemy types, more diverse environments, more than just a dungeon, and a final stage, which implies a final boss as well. So the last semester has been mainly getting the game loop finished, and here in this next semester, it's going to be a lot of polish. So things like the GUI, graphic quality is going to go up. The enemies, the graphics quality is going to go up. A lot of special effects to better indicate whenever abilities are being used. We have a lot of enemy ideas. We have a lot of character ideas currently in the works and in development. So there's a lot to be excited for with Shackled Souls, and I can't wait to get to work on it next semester and show you guys what I got. So to finish off, I'd just like to say thank you guys for your time. Thanks for tuning in to my presentation, and have a nice rest of your day.